Twitter.
Twitter?
Yep.
Okay, so we're live on Twitter. We have not gotten a Facebook notification yet.
No,
Not yet.
I got it. Facebook Live.
Live on Facebook.
LinkedIn,
Okay, I
I
see
got.
that. LinkedIn's live. Okay, so we're streaming live to LinkedIn. What? LinkedIn, Twitter,
Facebook.
Facebook, and YouTube.
What about
Dennis?
Mastodon? Are we on Mastodon yet?
We're not on Mastodon
Too complicated. Mastodon is too damn complicated.
All right,
yet.
no-
Maybe we should talk about
What
that.
about
No-
Truth
no
Social? We should
content,
be on
please.
Truth Social.
No content,
Let's save it for
please.
the show. Let's save it for the show. Okay. All right. I'm off and yeah. All righty. Okay, mute is off, and we're gonna go in 3, 2, 1. Oh, hang on. Wardrobe fix.
Saying everybody looked up.
Like wardrobe malfunction?
Yeah. It's just, it's
Okay, go
Steve.
ahead, Tina.
Never mind. Damn it.
And we're
Jim.
gonna go in.
Just a country doctor.
No, mute is off,
Oh, mute is
please.
off. And we're gonna go in. 3.
No,
What?
put mute is off in a row so that I have something to drop it in. So the timing is right. Needs to be
Yes.
that.
Mute is off. And we're gonna go in 3, 2, 1, and
Hi, Steve Gillmor here. This is the Gillmor Gang. Welcome from the state of Palo Alto, Georgia.
whoa, I don't
How
know where
about
to
that?
go.
Well, we'll start with Palo Alto. That's Keith Tier. Welcome, Keith.
It's a great pleasure to be here. And for those who don't know, my internet connection is apparently unstable, I'm being told. I don't know why. Everyone just froze on me.
It may be that you're unstable, but the internet's fine.
Exactly. Well, that's always been true.
You have a little bit of a lag, a tiny lag. I'm seeing. Are you okay?
No, and if I were seeing it, I wouldn't be calling attention to it. Let's see, from Atlanta, Georgia, or thereabouts, is Brent Leary. Welcome, Brent.
Are we streaming on Pterodactyl yet?
Ah!
What's that? Is that
We're on MySpace, man.
I like that better than Mastodon. I know Pterodactyl. Mhm. By the way, greetings from the state that I guess we did it last week, right? Like I said, like I thought we were gonna do. And Kristen Cinema just had to rip our thunder right from out from under us.
Well, according to Michael Markman in the Telegram feed, don't worry so much.
Oh, I'm not.
It's a good move for her.
We'll see. We'll see.
That I'm not worried about at all.
I just say you probably will never want to sit in the seat on a plane behind Senator Warnock.
No sleep.
He is a violent seat adjuster. Without any notice, you'll get him in your lap. It happened on 3 separate occasions, and it really made me think twice about if I'll vote for him again in 2028.
Good thing it happened the day after the election.
Did you guys have eye contact when he floated back in your direction?
No,
Will he remember you?
he almost had eye contact of me looking over him as he was in my lap.
That's what I meant.
How far back he came, but it is what it is.
Yeah. That's what she wrote.
And did you synchronize by putting your chair back into the person behind you?
No, I don't do seat on seat crime. I mean, if just because it's done to me doesn't mean I'm going to do it to somebody else. So I'm respectful. I have seat etiquette when it comes to the plane.
Boy, there's an awful lot of chatter about whether you should or shouldn't.
Are we starting
lean
the show
back.
already?
Have we
Frank?
started?
consciously not allowing me to introduce the rest of the
You know
gang?
what? He just wrapped me up in that story. I had to
Wow.
okay,
Okay,
carry
how's it
out.
going now?
It's over. It's gone. It's flock
So
of
you're
birds.
ready? You're ready for your introduction?
Yes. I am.
Silence is golden. From the state of London, England, is Frank Radis.
Steve, gangsters, it's a pleasure to be here. Aloha.
That was good. I like that.
Aloha from London.
It was the timing there that made it work, though, I think.
It was.
That pregnant pause. Why do they call it? They should not call it that. It should be something else. Like, how about pause?
No, the beauty of the English language is a pregnant pause is a totally different thing to a pause. It's a pause full of the potential for life.
Wow.
Okay, and we've already introduced
The
you, right?
pause that is expectant,
Exactly.
and the delivery will follow.
Okay,
It
the
is
guy
the
that just-
it is the
the guy
pause that
just
refreshes.
spoke- the guy that just spoke is Michael Markman. Welcome, Michael.
I'm here in the rainy Northwest, where our weather is, well, seasonably cool, not freezing.
Okay.
And third. Okay. And last but certainly not least, from the compact frame of Massachusetts is it's a small, very compact frame, is Dennis Pombriant.
Kind of small, not too big. Yeah,
Not gonna do it.
I got almost nothing for you after that. All of this, especially Brent's soliloquy about air travel and the Washington to Atlanta corridor these days. I feel your pain. I think I do. I haven't been on a plane in 3 years, so it's a little.
Brent, were you going to DC to lobby?
No. Pause.
Okay.
No, he got all the way into
okay.
the building.
I'll take box number 3 for 10, please, Steve.
No, I have to tell you, I was staying at the Gaylord thing on the National Harbor. It's very nice. I don't know if you guys have ever been there before. It's great.
That's a nice hotel.
Yeah.
You can't have a hotel called Gaylord that isn't nice. That is by definition, it has to be nice.
Yeah. Well, that one is.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna have an event next year, pick a Gaylord.
Steve, I think a Gillmor Gang event would be a great thing.
Okay, I'll see you on the plane.
Behind
Let's somebody decide what they want to talk about and start.
I'm really pissed off that Iran never ever dumped the morality police, are about to or have already executed a whole big bunch of protesters. But the protesters seem to be even more encouraged to continue their protests, which I applaud. I only bring it up at the top of the show. It doesn't have to be discussed, but I do it because the last show we did, I mentioned it at the end as, wow, this is a great thing. And I, like many other people, were, fooled once again by the regime.
Well, I'm not up to speed on this. Are you saying that they didn't get rid of the morality police?
They did not.
It was all BS.
It was all bullshit. Yes, thank you. It was. It turned out that the guy who is the head of the Ministry of Defense, I believe, who made the statement, is not responsible for being able to do that. That's somebody in the Department or the Ministry of the Interior, which kind of doesn't make sense anyway. And so it was never policy. It was just posturing.
Who knew
Well, I
that?
remember the initial news reports
Sorry,
saying that the guy had no authority to make the statement, so they were waiting for confirmation.
Yeah. Yep.
Well-
And then there was no confirmation because there couldn't be. There was confirmation that he was not empowered to do that.
You know, in a clerical dictatorship, the clerical dictators ultimately are the only people who are allowed to make the decisions. I don't know if any of you have watched season 5 of The Handmaid's Tale, but it would be true in a Christian clerical dictatorship as well.
Yeah. And actually,
or a
there's
Twitter clerical.
that, yeah, good. It's a
You make it
muscular.
sound like they're being run by a bunch of accountants. A clerical dictatorship.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
if only. If
There you go again with the English language. What is the
It's good.
definition of a cleric?
Or a clerk. In this case,
Ah.
clerical would refer to clerk,
or a clerk.
as you would say, yes.
I actually wouldn't, but
Whereas
we are
clerical is definitely religious. It means a cleric is a representative of either God or a prophet, depending on the religion.
But he's not authorized to speak for the god or prophet.
And no, God or the prophet speaks through him or her.
clerical, on the other hand, has a number of meanings.
It actually is derived not from clerical tasks, but from clergy. A cleric is a member of the clergy.
Makes sense.
A flock
Ipso
of clerics.
facto.
Okay, next subject.
Well, we have to talk about Chat GPT.
Oh, yeah.
Or not, depending on Steve. It's the Gillmor gang, but I think Chat GPT is throwing up thoughts across the spectrum.
Growing up is a good word.
Oh man, the violence against and against that and against the art AI stuff is really rampant certainly on my feed. People who are against it thinking it's going to, that both of them or all three of them that I'm thinking of are going to eventually really hurt the creator economy.
This almost sounds like clerical throwing up.
It's a clergyman.
I see.
So this clerical thing seems to be sticking around in spite of all people of the earth not wanting it to.
Well, it's kind of interesting. The chatbot is doing what in the 19th century we'd have called clerical duties in a broad sense.
Some clerical duties. I mean, it's a strange overlap. It does more and it does less.
Yeah.
It does
Maybe
it does a large range of things, and I think people are focusing mainly on its ability to write high school essays.
Oh, I had it write an introduction to a panel of mine. It really was good. I will use it.
Wow.
I just insert the names.
So Sam Altman tweeted this morning, and for the listeners who may not know, I doubt there's any of them, but just in case, he is one of the founders of OpenAI, which is the platform on which ChatGPT sits. Tweeted, don't take it too seriously. It's almost always wrong, or it's wrong often. So please don't trust its answers. It can be very confident even when it's wrong. And we've got a long way to go before you can assume it's right.
I think that's an important issue, at least at the moment. I heard your video chat this week, Keith, and you were discussing the difference between a query made to ChatGPT and a query made to Google. And one of the big differences is that Google will give you a way of tracking down where the answer comes from, and where it will give you a list of things that have been written on the topic, and you can query them, and you can see whether there's any reliability to where it comes from. But where you just get an answer from ChatGPT, you don't know how they know it. Well, I suppose you could ask them. You could say, "How do you know that?" And you might get an answer.
Well,
You definitely will get an answer, but it won't be specific.
yeah, and to be quite honest, I know it was junk when somebody told me they asked it, who was the top CRM thought leader, and names like Paul Greenberg, Dennis Pomerantz, Brent Leary, and Esteban Kolsky came up in the top 4. So you know it's a bunch of bull.
I want to recount.
Oh, my.
Well, I want you to know I prepared for this. I prepared for this edition of the gag. I asked 2 questions so I would have a definitive answer in case the topic came up. I asked, is free speech absolute? And did John Stuart Mill recognize any limits to free speech? So if that ever comes up today, I can tell you.
Yeah, but
I
it
think
won't,
it's-
but it
It's
won't be
my
right.
to my
Michael.
seat.
You just assured that it will never come up in this.
Oh, no, I think it's up.
Oh,
Oh, it's up.
Okay, what's the answer?
The right to free speech is not absolute and can be subject to certain limitations. In general, the right to free speech is considered to be a fundamental right protected by law in many countries. However, it is not absolute and can be subject to certain limitations. This is repetitive, you see. It doesn't have a good editor. For example, speech that incites violence or hatred against a particular individual or group is not protected by the right to free speech. Speech that is fraudulent, defamatory, or constitutes a genuine threat may also not be protected. Ultimately, the appropriate limits to free speech will depend on the specific circumstances and context in which the speech is being made.
Yeah, to win. That's only one red line, though, in that whole thing. You just lop out that repetitive part, and it's, acceptable.
The best example is the one that Ben Thompson from Stratechery did. I'm trying to adopt Steve's pronunciation there. I don't know if that's correct. Where he did Hobbes and Locke, and completely failed to understand that they have entirely different views of authoritarianism versus the separation of powers. Why? Because most of the texts that discuss it blend both names into paragraphs, and ChatGPT couldn't disambiguate which ideas belong to which person in a paragraph that mentioned both of them.
What was the question?
The question was, do Hobbes and Locke, well, actually, I don't remember the exact word in the question, but it was roughly, what do they agree on?
Oh, okay.
And it got it completely wrong. And I did one on Smith, Ricardo, and Karl Marx on economics that it got wrong as well. It seems to be a structural problem that it can't assign ideas to individuals when all the individuals are discussed in the same context.
Huh.
I have to ask it a question right now. Why does Superman and Batman have the same last name?
For me, it's down, by the way, ChatGPT. I just tried it. It says the servers have crashed.
oh no, what will we do?
It's the fail whale, which means it's bound to be a success, right? If it's getting fail whales, that's a sign of success.
I missed the fail whale.
Well, I just asked, where do Hobbes and Locke disagree? The answer is they have different views on many topics. One of the main areas they disagree is their understanding of the state of nature. Hobbes believed that the state of nature is a state of war in which people are constantly at odds with one another, and life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. On the other hand, Locke
Even
believed,
shorter with this chat RPT or whatever it is.
on the other hand, Locke believed that the state of nature is a state of peace in which people are able to live together and work for the common good.
But I picked up on this student essay meme that's going around about how students are now going to get it to write their essays. And
I know that is a crisis at work.
by the way, which is inevitably likely to be true, because when I was a student, we created something called an essay bank, and we literally let other students come and withdraw essays that
called cheating, right?
Well, you could say it's cheating, but we had a political motive called counterculture, where we wanted to be taught, stuff that wasn't being taught on the curriculum. So we decided to disrupt the curriculum by producing first-class essays against every question, thus giving students free time to study what they wanted to study. We were hippies.
Nice move. And
Yeah.
that was the Republican Party.
That was the anarchists mainly were behind it, to be honest. I was a hybrid. I was somewhere between an anarchist and a Marxist in those days and didn't really understand what either was. So
This sounds like the Weathermen.
as long as they had a red flag and said, you know, up yours to authority, I would join.
But, you know,
At the university level, essays are required to have footnotes and annotations that show you where you get the information. And
Well, that's just if you want it to be credible. It does, you know.
who
if
needs
you want to get a
that?
passing grade. If you know.
Yeah.
By the way, it just came back with about 300 words on why Batman and Superman have the same last name.
And what,
And to me, that's like the biggest problem with all this stuff. It's just too damn easy to create content, and then we get flooded with this nonsense, and it makes it more difficult to actually get to the good stuff because you're like just totally overwhelmed by people creating slop from asking a question that generates 500 words.
yeah, I want to go back to the way we used to do it, where everybody created tons of nonsense.
No, it's now everybody is creating more tons of nonsense because it's easier to create.
I want to, yeah.
Well, and that's one of the arguments that the people in the creative community have, that this content is flooding the zone, and that, you know, what is that going to mean down the road for the legitimate content creators, or the ones who say we're the legitimate ones, anyone that uses an AI,
actual people as opposed to machines.
well, that, yes.
But you know, I tested that out the other night. I said I asked it to create a summary of the day's news in the style of Heather Cox Richardson.
Who's that? I don't even know who she is.
She's incredible.
Now Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Well, no, the answer was that the knowledge base only goes up to 2021, so they can't do that.
Oh my God! I mean, am I the only one that gets frustrated with this stuff because it's just too much? I feel like, in the immortal words of Melly Mel from Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, too much.
Okay, it's a vote. There's too much of this.
What are we voting on?
Everybody else vote, please.
What's the question?
Is there too much of this?
In the world or in the show?
Oh, that.
I'm up for just too much of everything.
Oh, if that's what you'd like to do, Michael, then go ahead.
I don't know that it's too much, but I think that there's a problem when you don't know attribution, you know, when that's not clear and it's stated as fact, then you know,
but who has time for attribution and fact checking? We got to get this content out there as fast as possible.
I'll say, I think that it will eventually begin to add attribution, and the things that a lot of people are saying are wrong with it can be fixed because, hey, it's just a line of code. And I think that what happened right now is, you know, it's the shiny new object. It's the laser pointer and you're the cat. And that's just the way it is right now, because everyone is like piling on this AI thing that I used to do my face, which millions of people are using now.
That was really sharp too. It looked great, actually.
And they gave us back 100 of them. You gave them 15 pictures. They gave you 100 choices in 5 different categories. It was actually pretty cool.
Yeah, but on the flip side, you gave them access to your face data and your biometric data.
You know,
I'll be glad to take that.
I've seen people.
Well, that you know, first of all, it's already out there. If you don't think it is, then you know that's.
No, but you just made it easier for them.
But what I did was give them 15 was to assign 15 specific images to their website. Yes, I gave that to them. And I fully admit that I did. And a lot of people have said, you've just given the Russians your everything they want.
I don't know about that, but I go back to like the Gale Sayers, give me 15 inches of daylight and I'll, you know, score a touchdown. I mean, yeah, he might have scored a touchdown without the 15, you know, but you make it easy for him, you know, that's good. I think a lot of this is almost kind of too good to be true. Oh, this stuff is great. Oh, we just have to let you do this. Oh, okay.
Well, but I think that, an informed decision on the part of the user is, are you willing to accept this as a risk or not? Or just, are you willing to accept it or not? And that should be a decision that somebody else, some other individual makes, I think.
I have to say, I have about half a dozen friends who have posted.
Oh, that's a lot.
Who have posted these portraits.
That was good timing there, Dennis.
Very well done. And all of them look fantastic. They and I don't know if there's something in the algorithm that promotes flattery, or whether it's the ones that people choose to post.
Both.
They look fantastic.
Yeah, they look great.
I lost weight, which I thought was really good. Look at that. Oh my God, he's got a waist. And I was like, I obviously did not post any of the full body shots.
The key is that underneath all these different use cases, there are models, and the models learn on data. And ultimately, the goal is that the entire corpus of human knowledge is in the data that they learn from. So eventually what you're going to get to is a place where you can ask it to explain, not necessarily things like sources and attributions are going to become very old-fashioned. There's going to be narratives that you can ask it to be more or less nuanced. So if you don't want a single answer that you have to, in quotes, believe, you can tell it, I don't want a single answer that I have to believe. I want to know what the 3 or 4 major opinions are about whatever, fill in the blank, and it'll tell you. But it's doing the work of the researcher. So basically, machines can be researchers. They can parse stuff, and they can do it to your specification. So you can say, I want a single point of view, weighted towards free speech on what is free speech. Or you can say, I want a single point of view showing the limits to free speech. And it will do whatever you ask, but it will draw on all of the data that the human race has ever produced that's available to it.
So Keith, the other day I mentioned at the end of one of your stories that you didn't answer. Could you download into this AI? You probably can't do it now. Everything about you yourself, and have the AI spit out whatever it spits out in your voice. Or
you'd need some content, but you can copy and paste quite a large amount into that field. And for example, you can copy and paste a whole article in and say, give me a summary of this article. So you can give it content, but only what fits in that input field.
Will it store that content and refer back to it if needed?
It'll remember it. It'll definitely remember it. Yeah.
I'm sure it's remembering answers, because I will bet, at least at this early stage, many of the questions duplicate. People are asking the same thing, and I think once it's generated an answer, it probably will just replicate that answer.
So can I do an instant poll, Steve?
I don't know. Can you?
May I?
Yes, you may, Frank.
Who here has actually used this chat?
I think if you ask a second question, is who used it for actual work instead of just curiosity?
No.
Well, I admitted that I had it write an intro to a panel for me, which was good enough to use.
Wow, that's work.
I had it write a song for my editorial, if that was the week, and I asked it to write a song copying the style of Eleanor Rigby about a discussion between a mother and a son, where the son is frustrated by things he wants to change in the world, and the mother supports him. And I said, and the mother should be called Martha. And it wrote a song where the mother was Martha in the style of Eleanor Rigby. It was pretty good, actually.
Wow.
All right.
It gave you the lyrics. It didn't give you a song, right?
They give you the lyrics. I think you could go to OpenAI as another service called Muse, which would write the music.
And then another service called Voice, which would sing it to you.
And by the way, these are exact examples that have been thrown back at me by members of the creative community, specifically those in the music business, who have said this is not good for us. First of all, things are not good for them anyway right now, in terms of live performances and you know, who buys albums. It's the music business has been hit hard. Lots of venues closed. So this can be nothing but bad news for them. At least that's their point.
So that was
you know, things have always been tough
trying to
for
bring
music.
up, which is so if this AI stuff becomes our researcher, and then that frees, I was going to say, well, then that frees up our time to be creative, you know, to think about other things instead of doing this sort of like drudgery kind of work. But then if it takes the creative away, then what does that free up for us? Where do our minds go then? And what do we get to focus on if the creative is taken away? I don't know the answer to that. Do you?
Well, I don't think creative gets taken away as much as the tools available to creatives get better. And this just becomes a tool. Now, the fact that it can produce full-length songs and music doesn't mean it can be a hit maker. In fact, they're pretty crap, at least right now. But there probably will be a hit made by a computer at some point, because, you know, why wouldn't there be? But that doesn't mean that Mick Jagger is no longer interesting. It just means that he's got competition.
Yeah, he won't be around by then.
No, it means
No, but Keith
that
will
the
be
next
around.
Mick Jagger will have a much harder time breaking through. That's the real problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wonder about that. I think that a lot of the attraction to music, especially when you're young, which is the time you're most vulnerable and susceptible to music, has to do with fantasies that you have about the people who are singing to you. It's not just the music, it's not just the song, it's those four cute guys up there. It's that,
Yeah.
you know,
They're going to do those guys with deep
it's
fakes.
Debbie Harry. You know, if you got a machine to reproduce the way Debbie Harry sings and produce her band or be the Talking Heads, it wouldn't be as interesting as actually going to see the Talking Heads.
But I mean, the way I think of it is, I don't know if this is one of those times, Steve, when I'm not sure I even agree with myself, but I'm going to say it out loud because it's in my head, which is, what is the buried creative who doesn't have the technical skills to make music? Like, you can hear it in your head, but you can't transcribe it. There's a lot of really super good creative people who haven't learned the technical skills. And if you could release that creativity by giving them tools to take what's in their head and make it a song, wouldn't that be awesome? I mean, I've personally bought 3 synthesizers in my life, thinking that I could learn how to put what's in my head through a synthesizer and produce something, and failed every time because I suck. But if computers could make me not suck, what's in my head is still of interest, at least to me. And I feel good about.
There are programs
wait a minute.
available that have been doing that for a decade or more.
If you really suck, then a computer will only amplify your suckiness.
Yeah, but I suck at the mechanics. I don't know, the concepts in my head might not suck, but my ability to get them out and share them with another person sucks.
Nah.
None of the
No,
Beatles know how
I
to,
think the two things
there's
need to
a-
go together in the
none of the
creative
Beatles-
process.
none of the Beatles know how to use musical notation.
That's true.
Yeah, but they did know how to make music. It's not as though they had just sort of vague ideas that they needed help getting out there. They learned how to play their instruments, they learned how to sing, they learned how to harmonize, they learned how to entertain a group of people in a nightclub.
Right, but
Those are all real skills. It's not just that they had this vague notion of this would be a cute song. They worked.
I don't
very
know what
hard, you know,
side of this-
from mid-teenage on.
I don't know what side of this you're arguing.
I'm arguing that I don't think the Beatles are an example of what Keith was talking about. Keith is talking about people who have very little accomplishment as
Paul
musicians.
McCartney does not know how to write music, but
Paul McCartney is one of the
as
most accomplished
produced,
musicians in the
he's
world.
produced-
No. I listen. I am arguing against you and in favor of Keith.
I hear that. I just don't understand what your argument.
But because there are grades and there are categories of musical knowledge. One category of musical knowledge is reading sheet music. One category of music is knowing the music theory of chord progressions and harmony. There's another category of music that comes out of singing and playing. You can learn to be a musician without learning to read music. Irving Berlin, had a transposing piano because he could only write it out, play his songs in one key. So he moved the notes.
I understand that. I understand what you
There are
just
lots
said.
of musicians that have limitations.
How does that relate to what Keith was talking about if he just had the tools to be able to do this, that he would be able to do what he wants with music?
He would be able to do what he wants, but he wouldn't be able to do what the Beatles did.
I agree completely.
I agree with Michael. I agree with Michael. Getting a computer to do one facet of an intensely complex and difficult thing that the human brain can do really easily, it isn't going to produce what a human brain can produce.
I don't disagree.
The fact is,
I think that's of course that's true, but there are things out there, and I think we're heading in a direction. I'm not suggesting that it will be like human brain like, but AI wants to be as human brain like as it can possibly be. There are things out there, for example, right now in the video world that will put together your photographs that live in your iPhone against the piece of music that you choose using sound effects and sound bites and hits and stuff like that, and you press a button and 2 minutes later it comes out edited, done, finished.
right,
I'm not saying that
Apple
it's
when they first introduced iPhoto, or at the time they called it Photos, that's what it did. You put photos in there and press a button that says slideshow, and it played some music and gave you a montage of your photos.
But that now there's way more sophisticated ones like Magisto, which mixes video and stills and multiple layers and blah blah blah. But then it goes away and does it by itself. And so you don't have to be Steven Spielberg to go out and shoot and direct something that's going to be really good. You can actually be nobody and spit out something that's okay.
Well, you have to define really good.
Well, that's why I said okay.
I mean, something that's pleasant and watchable, and that doesn't make you run from the room screaming.
Yeah, and you don't have the skills to do that on your own. I see a time where many disciplines are being done through an AI like that.
Well, absolutely, but we've seen this from the beginning of computers.
Sci-fi.
When it once was all you could make with a person at his own desk was a typewriter, and then you had typewriters that did proportional type, and then you had for anything else you'd have to send out to a photo typesetter and a compositor and have someone paste it all up. But then came desktop publishing, and you could do that by yourself. So this is, so far it's a progress. It's not a break. It's not a revolution. But a lot of people who are looking at the new level of AI tools are saying we might be at some kind of inflection point where the progress is not a continual ramp. It's not entirely de novo, but it is a quantum leap from what's been happening before.
And that's the shiny object that everybody is going after, or as I said, the laser dot that your cat can't stop playing with.
I think you're right about that. I know that for the next few weeks, people will be posting these fantasy illustrations from their selfies. Everybody's going to get a big kick out of it. How long do you think that's going to last?
Not long. But It'll get bought by somebody that will put it into something that's even bigger. Who's to say that open source AI wouldn't have this as part of what it does? And then that they add something like they go and buy Magisto, and now they've got a video element, and then they go and buy whatever the audio portion of that is. And the next thing you know, they own AI, which they kind of do.
When you look back at all those other technologies, humans have been pretty good at initially over-infusing and overusing. Like I remember using Adobe PageMaker when it first came out. And
absolutely.
Putting 8 fonts on the same page just because I could, and it looked ugly. And eventually, same with the toaster, the video toaster.
Loved it.
Transitions that didn't need to be done just because you could. And eventually humans tend to figure out the proper use for something. And then use it as they can. I don't think we're in danger ever of being undermined by some kind of version of brainwashing. I think we're too intelligent to just accept what is given without crafting it to our needs. So
another example, look what happened in the world of art in the middle of the 19th century when photography came along. And suddenly anyone could get a representation of what was out in the world without a whole lot of skill. Did that end art? No, artists said, oh, well, we don't have to do that anymore. Let's do this. And you had an explosion of impressionism and abstract art, and all of the late 19th century and 20th century and 21st century art was in response to the fact that a mechanical chemical device could do something that they had to train to do by other means. So they said, okay, we don't have to do that. We'll do this.
Well, that's kind of what I was trying to get at is I just don't know what the next thing is. Like, if you don't have to do that, if you, whatever that is, that creative or that drudgery kind of pursuit, then what do you start to excel at? What does our brain start to focus on? If we say, well, hey, we don't have to do this creative piece that much, like this can do it enough to pass. So now let's use our time to do something else. Let's use our brains to focus on something else. What is that something else? I
think it's this is too narrow, but you'll get my meaning. It's critical thinking. It's instead of having to consume the past and spend years doing that before you can pontificate on the future, almost like your apprenticeship in knowledge. Your apprenticeship in knowledge will now be much faster. So free thinking, which young people always do because they haven't had enough education to yet become conformist, free thinking becomes essentially the human thing, and critical thinking and invention, the future. So I think it should release creative capabilities from drudgery, as you said. But in the past, that drudgery was held in high regard. A professor is somebody who had read a lot of books, understood them, and could write their own book because of it. I think what we value is going to be less the archiving historian and more the creative thinker.
So it's kind of what Tina was saying, but flipped.
I'm going to take the
what people do will depend on what people want to do.
yeah.
I think those are the areas, Tina. That's a really good point. Sorry, Brent, for
that's all right. No, it's these are all high-minded, but I'm going to look at the other end of the spectrum. I think a lot of the reason why this creator economy is gotten so many people involved in, on top of the ease of use and the accessibility of these tools, and the ability to create, reach a large amount of people. People are trying to figure out ways to make money where they don't have to, the traditional rat race. And so while there's going to be a certain segment of the community that's, looking for the ability to, free themselves and to, create, think creatively and critically at levels they may have never done before. And I totally get that. That's going to be a small fraction of the overall population. The overall population is looking to figure out, how can I make a living without having to go in and ask people if they want to supersize their order. So if they're able to take these tools and these opportunities to create something that they could sell or at least monetize via, the whole attention economy thing, they don't give a damn about, being as creative as possible. They're trying to figure out, well, if I can do this to make money, then I don't have to go someplace where I hate the people and I hate the work, and then I can do whatever I want outside of that. And I think that's probably driving the majority of people more so than the smaller percentage of people who are going to be looking to be, to free themselves to create and think critically and more creatively, which I think is great. But I think the vast majority of people aren't thinking on those terms.
Jim Armstrong on Facebook says, imagine what the Beatles could do with today's tools.
Yeah, but then he points out that Paul McCartney is actually doing that.
I was getting ready to say, there's a law of diminishing returns too, that these people are great anyway. So you give them the greatest tools, there's only a certain level of greatness they'll be able to reach regardless. It's more the people who, maybe on the Keith side, or saying, I have all this stuff in here, I just don't know how to get it out. They're the ones that probably benefit more than, the princes of the world, who, of course, I'm not even going to go down that road, but I'm just saying, it's the people who can't play 20 instruments, who can't write their own songs, who can't direct, find the right pieces for our band, who can't conduct. Those are the folks that are going to benefit the most out of that, more so than, the sheer geniuses, because they usually find a way to get stuff done.
Well,
Not
in
only
terms of
that, but-
monetizing it, though, there's always some kind of a funnel or a ladder. A lot of people could do it at one level, fewer people could do it at the higher level, fewer still could do it at a level higher than that. How many people will pay to see an average musician? There were a whole bunch of people working as bar bands when I was a kid. You could get a gig on the weekend, but there were only a few people getting record contracts, and only a few of those were getting hits, and only a few of those were selling out stadiums. I mean, it always winnows down to a few who do something that a huge number of people respond to.
Yeah, I think the modern tools are the leveling field. I was watching this YouTube of, I don't know how many of you are into craft work, but those guys they changed music as much as almost anybody else, because they were the guys who were doing electronic music before anybody knew what it was. And there's this clip of them in 1970 in this event in Germany, where they're playing this stuff, it seemed like for the first time in public, and the people did not know what the hell to make. It was the faces these people were making as these guys were, playing, making these sounds and noises, and they were into it. The Kraftwerk dudes, but the people were they were in stunned silence. Some people were looking like, what the hell are we doing here? But then, eventually people caught up. But they caught up because the tools became accessible in the 80s to kind of replicate some of the stuff these guys are doing in the 60s and 70s. And then by the time the late 80s came around, Kraftwerk's, lead on the group had completely vanished. It's because these tools kind of level the playing field with where folks like the Beatles and Prince, they're like this. The golf is like this. The better the tool set gets, the smaller the golf gets. So yeah, they may do something with it, but I think the general thought is better tools, easier tools, accessible tools shrinks the gap between the true greats and the people who need a little boost, to do some of the great stuff.
I think it's
When I was at
about
Apple, we were, just starting to market music composition tools, and we did a marketing video and went to see Laurie Anderson, and she said, well, now that you can do anything you can think of, you better think of something interesting to do.
Yeah, well, that's a great line. I mean, look, what has happened with technology specifically in the music business has been changed by home recording. Sure, there are still a handful of really great studios out there that are still in existence, but an awful lot of stuff is being done home recorded and remote, because the computer systems are strong enough and powerful enough to be able to allow you to do a direct line in from an instrument and have it sound like that instrument, and then layer it with all
sound
sorts
like
of,
some other instrument,
or sound like another instrument, and layer it with every kind of filter that you could ever even imagine, and it all happens in your laptop. So things like that have changed. I mean, Steve, imagine what your job would have been like if you'd had that, instead of how many times we had to overdub on a 4-track cassette.
I use Ableton Live a little bit. If any of you ever used Ableton
Yeah.
Live, and it gives you like a timeline with rows, and you can pick an instrument and you basically block out a little square to make a note, and you can create beats and stuff. Imagine being able to do that with your voice. Just say, give me a bass line using a slap bass, that sounds like boom, 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 whatever, and it would just do it. That Ableton Live is a little bit like manual work. It's kind of like 19th century.
Well, I grew up in the 80s, and I went to school and I became like a DJ, and back then you were using like actual turntables and a 2-channel mixer.
Yeah.
A lot of people were like, how the hell do you do it? I would love to do it, but I could never get it. And then in the 90s and the 2000s, you started getting laptops with software that, geez, you don't even have to be able to match the beat, because the software would do it for you. So what made the first group of DJs stand out, their ability to know the music, match beats, be able to blend them together. All of a sudden, technology allowed a huger group of people to actually do that stuff, and it rendered a lot of the first generation of DJs like almost useless, because the thing that they were banking on that made them popular was now embedded in the technology.
Well, you're a young man, Brent. When I was a DJ in college, which was 1974, the primary skill of a DJ was getting the needle to be at the start of the song.
So it's like, when this new technology comes about, the skill set has to change in order for you to be considered great, because instead of being great at being able to match beats up, now you got to figure out, well, how do I bring in other sounds, or how do I use 3 songs, and then how do I blend a completely different so it's like this technology, every generation gets a better technology, and it continually either shrinks the gap between the truly great at the first generation to people that now have caught up. And then what did those folks do? Like Tina was saying, maybe they got to figure out, well, now I got to be able to program my own beats and then bring those beats into my mix. And that was a completely different skill set from the first generation.
But the real goal of art, I now realize, having said that, I'm not allowed to answer it, but I'm going to do it anyway. The real goal of art,
right? I got that.
Is to move people, and moving people is emotional. And I mean, something like Frank Zappa, who I hated, nonetheless, I couldn't not listen to him because he was so weird. Like, don't eat the yellow snow. I thought it's like, he completely drove me nuts. I couldn't enjoy listening to Frank Zappa, but I had to listen to him.
Well, so I thought that was the same as Captain Beefheart.
Same thing, yeah. Actually, I DJ'd at a nightclub that Captain Beefheart was the band.
The hell is Captain Beefheart?
Oh,
go
man.
check out Captain Beefheart.
I don't think I want to check that out. Sorry.
But
Sound
the job of art is to move people, and moving people is about capturing them in their moment, and either reflecting it or moving it along.
Yeah.
And,
feeding it, giving them something that they want to stay on the dance floor for. That's the thing I loved about being a DJ back in the day. And I think you can still see that in these EDM folks, except they're like playing in front of 50,000 people.
Yeah.
But it's being able to kind of read the crowd and see what's making them want to be on the dance floor and move and getting them excited. And maybe there's that in this technology. I don't know if there is, because I don't know, much about it, but that seems to be where humans really still shine, is being able to physically, use all their senses to read people and try to, assess what they think people are looking for, and then provide it in a manner that is going to keep them, in tune or in sync or whatever. And
by the way, everyone should check out another if you're looking at Beefheart and Zappa, Arthur Brown's Kingdom Come. You got to check out Arthur Brown's Kingdom Come.
I never even heard of these people. I gotta check this out. By the way, Jim Armstrong is leaving some really good comments on Facebook. He said one was Kraftwerk led to Ableton and German EDM music. Direct correlation there. I mean, there's no denying that. He said he was a DJ in the 60s and he is still a DJ today. That's really cool.
Wow.
And DJs now are making 10 million a year. I should have stuck with it.
Hey, Jim, are you making 10 million a year?
Yeah, really. Can I work with you, Jim?
Or does that mean all 10 million are making $1
$1 a year? The aggregate is 10 million. Now,
By
some
the
of
way,
these are making like 50,000.
What's the median? What's the mean?
it's Dogecoin, by the way, 10 million Dogecoin a year.
Oh, I don't.
Oh, you can get paid, but you can't spend it.
Mhm.
But there is a distinction between live performance and DJing for a crowd is a live performance,
Yeah.
and art that you create alone in private, and then later try and distribute. When you're doing live performance, you do have to read the crowd, because your medium is not just your instrument. Your medium is what the people are doing in the seats or standing up in front of you.
That's how it all got started in the early
That's
70s
what you're
with
playing.
Grandmaster Flash. They would actually, there's like a 7-minute long song, but only about 20 seconds of the song is what people really like. So it was genius of like Cool Herc and Grandmaster Flash to buy multiple copies of the same song and just replay that 30 to 45 seconds of, they call it the break beat. And that's what drove the people crazy. They didn't want to hear the people singing and all that stuff. They just wanted the beat. And these folks found a way to give them the beat for like 15, 20 minutes straight. And it drove people crazy. And that's kind of the whole way that, hip hop and rap got started.
By the way, check out,
Going back to the
check out-
Beatles, they went to school on their audience. They learned to be what they are because they were live performers.
check out Jim Armstrong's Facebook page. He works at Mountain Winery. He's got all this live music videos from like John Fogerty and Stephen Stills and various other people on his Facebook page.
Cool.
Mountain Winery, Brent, if you don't know it, is a great live venue here in the Bay Area.
Oh, okay, cool. I'll check that out.
It's really beautiful.
Shout out to Jim Armstrong. All right, that's cool.
Well, next topic.
Somebody was supposed to say pause, by the way.
I think we've all concluded that AI can only be good.
No, I
Well, I think we've concluded that AI is not going away.
I think, yeah, we can agree on that.
No, I don't think we concluded that it could only be good. I think we concluded that it can be good.
I still hear some bad DJs out there, so no.
That's also the case. Any art or performance world is filled with mediocrity and filled with lousy people.
In the 70s in New York, there was this place called Nirvana, which was at the top of #1 Times Square. So that's the building
I
that,
remember it, Frank.
yeah, it's the building that you looked at on it's the building where the ball came down. It's the top of that building. But at the top of that building was this very happening nightclub that didn't ever get started until about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and it had live music, and you could go in there and there would be like this unknown guy named Michael Bolton performing, and it would be insane. And then the DJ would play for about 45 minutes, and I spent most of the night, if I wasn't playing there or listening to the band, up in the DJ booth, just going crazy watching how this guy did exactly what you described, Brent. That was to me, that was magical. And it was hard for me to figure out. I mean, I knew the music, I also knew the beats, and I knew the rhythms, but the mechanics of it were just astounding. And I was enamored by that. But then that place went out of business because everyone got arrested. That's another story.
Frank, wasn't that the 80s though? Wasn't that the 80s?
Late 70s, early 80s.
Remembering another club in the same spot.
Late 70s. It was an Indian restaurant that turned into a nightclub at night. It was the 70s.
I remember going to a club there though.
Mm-hmm.
There's been clubs there forever. I mean,
It must have been another club then at the time.
The guy who ran it and owned it was the guy who did the first concert for Bangladesh with George Harrison and Ravi Shankar, and somehow absconded with a tremendous amount of the money.
Yeah.
But that again is another story. Oh geez, I hope he doesn't sue me. I think he's hey buddy, God bless you.
Well, we can talk about New York nightclubs. By the way, this week, no?
By the way, this week.
No, probably next week too.
Caroline's on Broadway is closing down.
I saw that. I meant to send you a note on that. That was like
Heartbreaking, right?
There's a distinction between live performance.
I meant to send you a note.
Somehow I can't hear you. Whoever's talking right now.
Michael is frozen too, or no, he's unfrozen.
Michael, can you say something?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. So
Okay. It may have been someone else that you weren't hearing.
Oh, maybe.
Ooh,
Okay, so
there you go.
yeah, Caroline,
Nightclubs in New York.
after 30 years at that location, Frank and Steve and I remember it more from the earlier locations, but it has been one of the seminal comedy clubs in the country, and we're hoping, although the statements made by Caroline have been a little vague about whether there will be a new stand-up comedy venue in Manhattan, but we're hoping that there will be. I think that there has to be, but she's made some statements about the comedy festival that she runs, and
You mean the New York Comedy Festival, which I actually created and handed to the executives of an unnamed network, only to see them create it.
Wow.
That was who's ever heard of anything like that in the entertainment business? Not me.
Never happens. Oh well, sorry, but a little aside, it's a little bit sentimental to me. Steve and I met at Caroline's.
Nice.
I think we met at Caroline's.
all roads led to Caroline.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's where we met. I think it was with Richard Belzer too.
I heard Caroline's was sweet.
Yeah.
Only in the 7th inning at Fenway Park.
Yeah.
By the
Or
way,
at any Manchester or at any football game in the United Kingdom.
Sweet Caroline.
Why is that why is that a thing with the football games?
And no idea. I
No
don't
clue.
know how it happened. It didn't used to be true. It's quite a new phenomenon.
Yeah. It is a phenomenon, though. Absolutely.
I mean,
You can walk
the name
up
doesn't
and down
correlate
Earl's
with it,
Court
right?
Road during a soccer match and hear every single bar is coming out with that song.
I have a theory, which is in England, the Welsh teams, every Welshman joins a choir, and it is men mainly. And the Welsh choirs, when they go to games, they sing, and they have these amazing songs, mainly in Welsh, that they all sing together. And it's kind of quite amazing to listen to. And I think the English were jealous of the Welsh. So they needed a song that people could keep tuned to, that they could all sing together. And I think they chose Sweet Caroline. So I think it's actually some kind of competition with Welsh choristers from the Welsh hills and mines who are good singers. Tom Jones, if you know, and Harry Seacombe, who was one of the original Goons, are both amazing baritone Welsh singers.
Tom
Did you
Jones
see
is just
Neil
a
Diamond
monster.
on his Broadway show?
No.
You know, he had to stop performing 5 years ago. But they opened up a Broadway show of his music, and he was there at the premiere. And you can find him on YouTube. Look for Neil Diamond live on Broadway. He sang it, and it was an amazing moment with the audience.
It's a taste I've never acquired.
Steve is not crazy about Neil.
I've never been crazy about him either, but it's still just a remarkable moment of show business.
Sadly, my
Back.
wife is a Neil Diamond zealot, and forced me to go to the Menlo Park Guild Theatre recently to watch the Super Diamonds, who are a tribute band, who are actually really good at just doing Neil Diamond songs.
Oh my gosh.
Sadly.
I've seen him perform live, actually. Okay. Let's move on.
All right, well, we're running out of time,
We are.
sadly.
So someone online is calling GPT a virus.
So what's that about?
I'd agree with that.
What does that mean?
It just
I
means
guess that
that
it's infecting everybody's
out of
head.
control,
Hmm.
because at least 3 out of 7 squares here enjoy it.
Do we have time to ask Dennis what's been on his mind?
I know I haven't been talking a lot today, right?
Right.
Yeah, you've been Brenting.
Well, somebody's got to do it.
The role of Brent
I've
Leary
been-
played by Dennis Pombriant.
I think
today.
it's an appropriate response to the chat AI phenomenon, is silence, more silence.
Well, actually, I spent a lot of the show trying to find a quote from 1930 from John Maynard Keynes, and I found it. And the title of the essay, or I guess it was a speech, was the economic challenges for our grandchildren. And it was Keynes' opinion that in 100 years, we, the grandchildren of that era, wouldn't be dealing with issues like production and famine and a lot of the things that go with life, and that all those problems would be solved through technology, and actually he actually said compound interest and a couple of other things. So that's just the setup. So here's the quote: "The struggle for subsistence had always been hitherto the primary, most pressing problem. Once the economic problems were solved, humankind would be deprived of its traditional purpose and instead would face the real permanent problem: how to use freedom from pressing economic cares to live wisely and agreeably and well." And I think this discussion about chatbot CPQ or whatever it's called, kind of begins to zero in on that. How do you live well in a time when most of your creature comforts have been addressed, and parenthetically, will those creature comforts always be addressed, or will you wake up in Ukraine?
Didn't Jules Verne write about that?
Well, that's
Ukraine?
it.
Oh, about the future creature comforts. And by the way, the creatures
Didn't
were not
Maslow
comfortable.
visualize that with his hierarchy of values? There's certain base level needs, and as you get those satisfied, you move up.
But that goes to the core of my internal narrative that I have in my head, which is when you contrast the gains. What's that?
Sorry about that. I was checking the football scores and those videos.
Brent's deep vein.
I hate that.
When you contrast the gains of progress, broadly speaking, but technology-driven, human-created progress, and you imagine that time coming that Keynes describes, and then you contrast it with the social system we live in, where the rich get richer and where nation states compete for resources, the potential versus the reality is quite stark.
Yes.
To your Ukraine point, which puts on human beings a kind of a question of, do you want a better future for humanity, or do you want a better future for fill in the blank nation's citizens? And they're not the same answer. And that question, hasn't really arisen in history that often, if ever, as starkly as it is now.
Well, it goes back to something that William Gibson said very famously: the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed.
Yeah.
And
Well, and that was the past and the present, and it is our future. It'll never be equally distributed.
Why?
Well,
Well,
as long as people who are at the top, who have the control and the power, they don't want to see anything that could potentially disrupt that. So
And they're not going to share it.
right,
Well,
they're always
Sam-
going to fight that.
Sam Altman, the OpenAI founder, has another project called WorldCoin. And in WorldCoin, he's articulated something that everyone considers to be utopian, but it basically says there should be 100% tax on all profits produced where there is no human labor involved. In other words, individuals shouldn't be allowed to own the benefits of technology. And that 100% tax should then be distributed according to need through WorldCoin. And WorldCoin is his project to try to identify individual human beings using retina scans so that nobody can collect twice. But he does have, along with OpenAI, he has this kind of idea of answering this question of how do you distribute resources. And he's a young guy and he's very idealistic, and you can criticize him all kinds of ways, but he's at least asking a lot of the right questions.
Well, the distribution of resources distribution of resources has always been an issue, and it's an issue that when push comes to shove ends up in revolution. To answer Brent's question.
Yeah, usually, but for that to happen, extremes usually have to happen, like bread queues and things like that.
Well,
I'm looking at 2016. That's
DJ in the
close
back
enough.
of my head says, at this point, we should cue Billie Holiday to sing "God Bless the Child."
Yeah, or Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
Yeah, I
David
think the
Clayton
issue
Thomas.
is when it comes to the have and the have-nots. It's actually also about who calls the shots. It's about the power, and if the haves treat the have-nots good or well, or at least in their eyes, they don't feel like they're being taken advantage of. this thing could go on forever. But it's when they start feeling like they're not treating them right, and they don't want to give over or change. They always want to be calling the shots. That's when everything gets out of whack, and people aren't going to take it anymore. But
They elect Donald Trump.
Yeah, it takes a while for people not to take something in this country, or I'm sorry, in that country.
You know, the book I just finished, I mentioned it last week, Slouching Towards Utopia by a Berkeley economist, makes the point that from 1870 to 2010, with an interruption by the Second World War, global domestic product grew faster, unevenly, but faster than any time before that in human history, by several orders of magnitude. He picks 2010 because he says in 2010 it stopped, and we reverted to a growth rate that was pre-1870. And his point was that everybody was getting everybody was participating and taking a share of an increasing pie, and that is not happening now. And 2016 was a checkpoint in that, and there either is more to come, or we've got to get back on that growth curve with a growth curve that's sufficient. Even people at the bottom of the economic ladder think they're making progress, and they are. Without that, not so much.
So when did we reach the tipping point where children stopped expecting to make more money than their parents?
I don't know if that's a good question, because we've all been children, and I could say that I don't know any children right now, but I would expect that they all have some vague thought that they're going to do better than their parents.
Well, but I think young people today have a sense of limitation that my parents didn't have, that my generation didn't have, and you know, you when you look at Gen Z, they really feel that they are in a ditch that's hard to climb out of.
I take it back. I think you're right. I think you're very right.
yeah, I'm thinking my parents were both like, teachers, educators. So they weren't rolling in the dough. They didn't have any high powered jobs or anything. But, as they both have passed away, and looking back at what they were able to get, I mean, they bought like 3 houses and put kids to school with graduate degrees and on salaries of teachers. I mean, I don't think you're seeing kids today being able to even keep up with that. And they could, they come out of school with debt like 60, 80, $100,000, and then they're going to try to find a house and then a job that actually goes with what they went to school. I think the generation that thought that they would be better off than their parents, that's kind of gone, at least for the short term.
I heard a statistic yesterday, and I don't want to, I'm not going to quote it, but it was something like, in your lifetime today, you will have upwards of 15 different jobs. In my lifetime, and my peers had a handful of jobs, some of which they stayed at for 15, 20, 25 years, and continued to move up. Anecdotally, I'm not seeing a whole lot of that Gen Zers that are sitting in job. They haven't had that many years anyway, but even millennials from that point up, holding on to a job for a very long time anymore.
Well, that to me mirrors a societal trend that is post civil rights era, which is the rise of individualism. And it isn't limited to this generation, this Gen Z generation. It really started once the major battles in feminism, anti-racism and such were considered won. even though they weren't really one, the narrative turned to the individual achievement. And individual achievement is very different to societal progress. And the minute you live in a world of individual achievement, you consider everybody else competition, not your colleagues. So I think we live in that world today, and we have it. Even my generation has it because it started. I'm basically became conscious around 1970, let's say. That some of the battles were still being fought, but we grew up in this individual achievement world, and there's something really good about individual achievement, and there's something really bad about it. And disambiguating that, my 19-year-old just had his 20th birthday, and him and his girlfriend were here. And she's quite political. She works in youth advocacy. She's born into a Latino family, and she's able to articulate pretty clearly how she sees the world. And it was interesting to me how there isn't a lot of faith in us. There's a lot of faith in me or I. So I think that is what it's all about. And I don't know how you get that back, because economic well-being tends to reinforce individualism. So we live in the richest nation on earth. So even though it's not well distributed, everybody somehow seems to think that it's on them individually to do well.
Yeah.
You can see the shift in language, in the change of language. People used to aspire to a job in this term. I want to find a position with the firm, and the firm is not that firm anymore. The positions don't hold.
No. Well, there you go. Wherever you go, there you are.
He got it in.
Well, look at this panel. How many people here are self-employed?
Well, kind of. I have a startup that's funded, but
I'm retired, so I'm self-unemployed.
Oh, yeah.
I am as well self-unemployed, but I still dabble. So
Sure. Well, what was your
Well,
last job?
Most of my life I've worked freelancing. A couple of times I've worked with positions which I've held for 4 or 9 years, but most of the time it's been freelancing or self-employed, as you want to call it.
I've been
Which has a
self-employed almost
wonderful-
20 years.
and there's something wonderful about that, right? As long as you can pay the bills, it gives you realms of freedom that you don't have when you're an employee. On the other hand, you have insecurities because there's times when you don't pull in the money. And
Yeah, but the point is, well, ask the next question. Why aren't you working for some organization? And I can't speak for anybody but myself, but I found that no organization would be able to support me to do what I wanted to do, to earn a living.
in my case,
It's like I knew something, I could do something, that there was a market for what I did, but there was no market for, it was unemployable.
same for me. I think I'm unemployable. I mean, the idea that I would apply for a job and be the right fit is like so unlikely to be true.
Yeah, I think I go along with that too. I can't even imagine. I can't remember the last time I applied for a job. I guess it was PricewaterhouseCoopers, 1999. I mean, it's been that long. I can't imagine doing it now.
Did you party then?
I actually did that. I got into a bad time between startups in the 90s, and I applied for a job and I got it. And they sent me, the day before I was due to start, they sent me roughly the job spec. And I didn't go in because I just, the first line more or less said, here's what we want you to do. And my brain said, oh, I have to do what they want. I can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, last thoughts for this one. Let's start with Michael Markman.
My last thought is that I'm happy we didn't have to discuss that guy or that other guy.
Yay, small victories.
Hmm.
Yeah, that name didn't come up at all. Well, at least once. I'm not gonna say it.
Careful,
Tina,
That's what I say to my cat.
Tina,
Tina.
If I had a cat.
Well, oh, I forgot. I have to do this. Well, I really found this conversation today to be really interesting. It was kind of existential, very Sunday rolling kind of conversation, and a little different. I just really enjoyed it, and happy holidays.
Hmm.
Frank Radis.
Yeah, I thought the show was very interesting. I enjoyed it a lot and was glad to participate. And it's snowing here in London, so
Ooh.
there you go.
Been snowing.
I mean, the snowing here in London is not quite the same as snowing in New York, but it's snowing here in London.
Dennis Pombriand.
Let us all go and live agreeably and well.
Keith Chair.
Peace on earth.
Live long and prosper. Twitter
Isn't
Blue
that
starts
Jewish?
tomorrow, by the way. Twitter Blue starts tomorrow, $8 a month, unless you're on iOS, where Tim Cook's going to get $3 of the 11 you're going to pay.
And
So I have a question,
There already
Keith.
are for Twitter Blue.
Yeah.
Do we lose our checks tomorrow if we don't pay?
I
Well,
think
some of us don't have checks.
So
I guess if you get asked to upgrade, I don't know actually. I don't know. We'll see.
Hmm.
I think at the expiry of the next month, you'll be asked to pay the new rate, and this will be up to you.
Yeah, I'll drop out of Twitter at that point.
Yeah,
I mean,
a
they're
lot of
giving-
people have said that and not done it.
Well, I think that's exactly what I'll do.
So you're one of those people who will.
No, I'm going to say it and not do it.
Fair enough.
The preview says that the big win is you're going to get an edit button, and the Gillmor Gang stream can go to 1080p from 720p if you're Twitter Blue.
Wow.
Well, man, watch out for your camera. Make
Brent,
sure you
did
have
you
good
get-
lighting.
Brent, did you have a last thought here?
To Frank, even though you say the snow is different than it is in London than it is in New York, still advise you to stay away from any yellow snow. Just
I agree. 100%.
stay away.
Yeah. Don't eat the yellow snow. That's all I'm saying.
And
Moving
Steve,
to Montana soon.
Oh, by the way, Yellowstone has lost its luster, my opinion. That's it.
Uh-oh.
Yes, but it's been replaced by the guy
Also,
from Rocky.
Oh, that's a good show.
That's
Yeah.
best show on the
yeah, I just watched the latest episode and wow.
Yeah.
What show is that?
Tulsa King. It's called Tulsa King.
Tulsa
It's also
King,
Taylor Swift.
It's good.
It's on the
It
Paramount.
also has
Plus
people who
channel.
cut their teeth on the Sopranos.
Makes
He's
sense.
involved, yes, but it's
What's the name of it again? One more time.
Tulsa, city of
King.
Tulsa, King.
Oh,
Tulsa King.
yes.
Have any of you watched The Peripheral on Amazon Prime?
Yeah, I have. I like it a lot because it's so science fiction-y,
fiction?
techy.
Who knew?
Yeah.
Yeah. Other than that,
Well, it's well done. It's a William Gibson novel, and it's really well done. And the concept within it is, a novel one for science fiction, even. So it's quite well done.
I've been enjoying a show also called Fleischman's in Trouble. Is that what it's called? Yeah.
I haven't heard of that, but
Oh,
you
yeah.
should watch Wednesday. Check it out. Check out Wednesday. You'll
Oh, yes, endorsed,
you
endorsed.
it's good.
The Addams Family Wednesday.
It's good. Trust
Yes.
trust me and Michael.
The Addams Family Wednesday. It's mostly directed by Tim Burton.
Yeah.
The cast is brilliant, and it's very intelligent, very well
Yeah.
written.
Yeah.
All right.
And cool.
I'm going to stay in the less intelligent area.
I'm going to go back and watch the next episode of Slow Horses as soon as I leave
Yes,
here.
that's been excellent in the second.
Yeah.
Well, all
There's
right.
that.
Okay.
Steve,
Thanks to
Steve,
everybody.
Last thoughts?
Yeah, you just heard them.
Oh, okay.
Thanks to everybody who showed up and especially those who didn't. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tina.
Thank you. And you, and you, and you, and you, and you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, folks. Chow mains.